இந்த வீடியோவை உங்களுக்கு வழங்குபவர்கள் Paces Pay, secure digital payments with multiple features and great success rate.
The Norman Rockwell of South India. Why have I done that? It's because Norman Rockwell, like Konde Raju and his students, Subaya, Ramalingam, these others, was a popular artist in the US. Rockwell did the covers of magazines, famous American magazines in the early 20th century, the Saturday Evening Post or Look magazine. And people waited for these magazines just to see the covers that he'd done for them. In a similar way, K. Madhavan, as you will know, worked for Mutaram, Ananda Vigadan, Kale Magal, and so many other monthly magazines or bi-monthly magazines. And in some cases, people got the magazine not for the contents, but for the cover, because it was so colorful and good-looking. This is a cover from a magazine done by Norman Rockwell. And I just wanted to show you this cover. It's a kind of a cultural or social comment. Here's a baseball team, and there's the veteran players sitting on the benches, and here comes a new player for the team. And he's dressed in an ill-fitted suit, and he's nervous, and it's just a lovely little moment. And that's the kind of thing that he was doing, and in some cases Madhavan was doing as well. He was born, next slide. Oh, just to show you, a Madhavan cover, which has an everyday quality to it, but when people look at that, they just recognize what's happening. A woman's entering the temple, and it's something that people can enjoy and feel it's part of their life. Next. There's Norman Rockwell, the American popular artist. He's visiting the Taj Mahal, and I just thought it was interesting. He came to India, next, and he did a famous cover of the Post, one of his magazines in America, of Nehru after. Rockwell wasn't really considered a serious artist until relatively recently. Now they've built a museum to him. So that's the difference. And it's a little bit, to me, like what Chitralyam is doing to try to collect and to celebrate the work of popular artists. So here's Madhavan. He was born in 1906 in Tiruvananthapuram. And like many Malayalis, he migrated in 1929, shifted to Chennai, to Madras. He was from a very well-based, traditional artistic family. They were ivory carvers, both on his mother's side and on his father's side. And I could give you all the details of his uncles and the way they taught in various places. They were well-known ivory carvers. And I want to introduce a person who's doing research on the ivory carving tradition in Kerala and on the ancestors of K. Madhavan. So soon we'll have a book which tells us about Madhavan's family and all their accomplishments in Kerala. His name is Sarat Sundar Rajiv. And he's already published a book called The King's Craftsman in 2016. And now he's going to publish a book on the court art tradition of Travancore. And that will, of course, include Raja Ravi Varma, who came out of the same kind of tradition. and went on to be perhaps the best known popular artist in many ways of India. And Madhavan, like many of the early popular artists, was actually a singer, an actor, and a backdrop painter, a purda painter, for many companies. You'll know the Kaniya Company, KSK Nadar, TK Brothers. He worked for them in these artistic fields before going into painting. And that has very strong links to the Kovilpati group, Kande Raju's group, because they came out of the same tradition. They were working with boys' companies, different kinds of drama companies, and they went from that to the publishing art business. Pramenda Jacob, who wrote a wonderful book about banner painters, says that Madhavan was the master artist of the first generation of banner painters. And she interviewed 7 different banner painters or their sons, and each one of them acknowledged Madhavan as a kind of a leader of their field. So he did sets, movie sets, and banners for theaters, for Gemini, for S.S. Vasan's Chandralekha. Vasan called Madhavan the father of movie banners. I think it's a nice tribute. And the late banner painter Lakshmipati of Mohan Arts called Madhavan the genius artist. So he was really influential and very much inspired that work. The 50s and the 60s were the most creative period of this form of urban art. And Madhavan went on to work also as an art director for different movie companies. You'll know Manamagal, Nalatambi. These were films that Madhavan contributed to. Let's go to another one. Oh, I just wanted to show you, this isn't related to Madhavan except for these are the last of the drama scene painters. They were still working in Madurai when I was at the university there in the 1980s. They are no more, but I think they're the last group that was actually painting full-size banner backdrops. Next. His name is Subayar, that banner painter. And of course, Mount Road in the old days, full of hand-painted posters for the cinema, for the movies, including, oh God, I'm going to forget his name. This guy.
Sylvester Stallone.
Who?
Sylvester Stallone.
No? Oh, yes, you're right. Yeah, still looking. Yeah. At this time, Madhavan received several commissions and provided paintings of Shivaji Ganeshan and MGR, Anadarai, and maybe you saw some of the portraits in the Rajaji Hall. I haven't myself, but I've heard that they're still there. I hope that they're still there. And next. I just showed that to you because I think banner painting went really through the roof at a certain point. You can see the size of the people standing in front there. There's your former 6-time chief minister. And this doesn't have to do with Madhavan, but it has to do with the succession after Madhavan of this kind of work. Madhavan worked for politics as well as for the sacred and just pleasure. Yes, next. So here's a cover of Uma, another popular magazine. And some of you will remember the cinema on Mount Road. Which cinema was it? Right. Was that Topaz, Ruby, and Diamond? No. Sapphire. Yeah. Anyway, the owner of that Anand Cinema on Mount Road was Uma Pati. He collected and framed covers from Uma. And that's the first time I ever saw the work of Madhavan. I went into that cinema and I didn't have any idea who this was, but he had all these Madhavan covers up as attractions for people. And when they came to the movies, they just enjoyed seeing these covers. And here's an example of a, Pongal greeting card. But as you can see, it's not without affiliation. So DK, DMK, ADMK, as they came along, he would paint for those special cards. Next. And here's another one. A Pongal scene, maybe Aida Puja. Pongal. What's the festival? Yeah, a harvest festival, but there's a day for the Marta Pongal. Yeah, that's what it says. Okay, let's go to the next one. Yeah. Now, Madhavan had a great sense of politics. And here's an example of one of his calendar prints. This is Nehru, okay? But not just Nehru, not just a figure of Nehru, but Nehru meeting Kamraj, meeting the Queen, meeting Khrushchev, the Russian leader, and the favorite of all, Jackie Kennedy. Next. I'll just show you a couple of these. This is one I like particularly. This is Gandhi distributing apples to children. Madhavan was at least aware and close to, I would have to talk with you or with other members of the family to know if he was sympathetic to the Dravidian movement. But I think he was, just by looking at his pictures. Because even though Gandhi is offering these apples to children, look at the expressions on the children's faces. They're not the usual expressions of children meeting the father of the nation. They all look skeptical. And this isn't by chance. He didn't paint by chance. So when you look at this little boy here, oh, is this working? Yeah. And this little boy and this girl, they're all, so this is a way that a popular artist can give a message without, a great deal of direction, but it's there. And I think Gandhi's particular position within Tamil Nadu, this was a comment on that. Next. Now here's a priceless one by Madhavan. Here's John F. Kennedy showing Nehru where India is on the map. What is going on here? And Nehru's looking kind of skeptical. And so this is about power balance at the time. And if you know the history of Kennedy with respect to Nehru, it was a very difficult relationship. This is because at this time, the Soviet Union was the main supporter of India from outside. And here comes the American president. So he did a lot of these kind of celebrations of the relationship between the two countries, but this is the classic. So here's Kennedy shaking hands with Nehru, but what is up above? The Russian premier, looking down on the two of them. And there's white doves flying into the air, which are a symbol of peace. So what Madhavan is really saying is it's possible for Nehru to have a relationship with the US, even though the big wheel is looking down on the two of them. And even though Madhavan is known for his secular work, he was also working with beautiful religious painting, with the TAS Snuff Company, with Burma Shell. We saw some coffee advertising there. And his images of Morgan and other gods was very light and very lighthearted. You know, I mentioned the theater, combining elements of a temple and a theater with the backdrop. And you see this in much of his work and also in the work of the Kovalpati group. So here's another Bala Morgan. I think that's Palani in the background. And it has a kind of a kindness and a kind of a beauty that he was famous for. People like to look at his images because it made them feel good. And here from another Pongal card is Bala Morgan and Bala Ganapati together. And I was given as a gift a few of his sketches, so you can see how skilled he was with his line drawings and so forth. He only needed to add little bits of color to really make these drawings and paintings stand out. Now, the other thing that we'll see from popular art of the 20th century in Tamil Nadu particularly is the combination of different kinds of attraction. So here's a movie star. Give me her name. She's Radha, right? And Krishna's playing in the background. And so this appeals both to a religious feeling and a movie star feeling in the same painting. And quite often, Madhavan and other popular artists would take a movie star who'd become a politician. So you'd have the politician, the movie star, and the religious figure all combined in one painting. So that appealed to a wide group of people. And, you know, this is a little bit erotic, because, of course, the story of Krishna and Radha is an erotic story. But it's also religiously appealing. Next. Now, I wanted to show you another element of Madhavan's work, which is the romance of the countryside. This is the romantic view of people in the countryside. Good-looking, prosperous people in the harvest. This was something that was very common and very popular when people started to move to the cities, they looked back on their rural lives as, in a sense, a beautiful time for them. And Madhavan captured this very nicely and repeatedly over and over again. So that's what we're seeing here, is the celebration of life in the country. Well, here's other elements of it. This is Pongal again, and the bull running down below, and so forth. Very simple. This isn't, detail. Just a few lines, a few beautiful colors. And his watercolor painting departed from a lot of the popular artists at the time who were using oils or using other forms of paint. Here's a second or a third way that Madhavan's work appealed to people. The love between a mother and a child. And this was used over and over and over again in all kinds of media. It was a sure winner for attracting ordinary people to art and children. Just a few strokes of the kids eating sugar cane out in the field. They're all beautiful little children, and people really like to see that. Here's another element. Madhavan, like many other popular artists, loved to paint a kind of a tribal-like woman, a kind of a Shakuntala or something like that, but tribal. So she doesn't have ornaments of gold and silver. She has flowers, and she's holding a deer. But the relationship between the woman and the animal is like a very loving relationship. And you see this throughout Indian mythology, but here it's a very appealing one. And he was famous for painting horses, and they called him Kurirai Madhavan during his painting career, just because he did beautiful horses. But here's another one that was really, really a powerful one. That might make you buy that paint. I don't know. But it would make you cut it out and frame it and enjoy it. And, of course, the relationships of love between a girl in the country, also a tribal type of thing with a king or a prince. This is looking back at history, but putting it in a kind of a very casual kind of situation. It doesn't look like a prince meeting a princess, for example. It looks more like just a chance meeting in the forest, which is kind of casual and kind of, I would say, understated. Here's another one. This is a famous kind of thing. The woman's drawing water from the well, but what she, her water is pouring out because she's distracted by the handsome guy with his bullocks there. And here's I've been saying this theme, but this was a theme that went through the mid-20th century. There's a deer in the background, a waterfall, and a beautiful girl in a kind of a pose like this. And then it gets right down to quite an erotic pose, which some Tamil specialists have said, this is something that comes from Hollywood stills. So this pose is one that's very common in Hollywood films. Here, put over into the forest and the forest girl. And she's got bow and arrows there. It's probably something that never existed, but it appealed to people. Yes. Along with the appeal, the sort of appeal of women as objects of desire, he quite often would do something like this, which in Indian art history is called the wet sari look. And, you know, a woman who's gone to have her bath and she's going back home with the water and so forth. It's an erotic image. And then I think I wanted to sort of end with this in terms of my images, because it shows a new kind of image for the 20th century, in which the roles are sometimes reversed between men and women. So what's happening here? It's the woman who's doing the painting, and the man who's looking on kind of, you know, a little bit abashed, and, you know, and he did this quite frequently. So I think he was trying to say, in the modern world, women will take their place. It's not always a man who's the artist and a woman who's looking on. This is the other way around. And so this is kind of social information that that helped to push the idea that men and women deserve similar kinds of attention. This is in the entrance to the Minachi temple. Just a little shop. But you see behind are all framed prints. And this is something, that's a Ravi Varma, that's a Ravi Varma, and these are from the Gandaraju group. They're everywhere, right? They were everywhere. They're not everywhere anymore. This printing industry that Madhavan contributed to really fell apart at the end of the 20th century. Because by then, the big studio printers had they bought the images. So they had hundreds and thousands of images. They had retouchers working in the studios who could just change the color or change, and then they could issue them again. And the painters weren't really required anymore. So where these really ended up, this is I think a nice image of Ramalingam from Kovilpati, and above is his painting of the goddess that's most worshipped in Kovilpati, and two Ravi Varmas, one on either side, and one of Kande Raju's paintings. So it shows that in his own puja room, Ramalingam was honoring these various popular artists and popular art. And of course, it's not just Hindus who were doing this. There was Christians and Muslims as well, and that's just the wall in Pondicherry. And this is a key one for me, because in addition to the big sweet shops and the big cloth shops who had lines of these prints up, this is an artist studio in Madurai, and you can see he has calendar prints, he's got portraits, he's got photographs, and these are an assemblage of things that is meaningful to him and his family. This accumulation of popular art is the place where it still exists in everyday life. And these things are very precious because they're never taken down, you know, until they tear the building down. These things are going to be there. And they accumulate over time to show the guru, the god, the masters, the ancestors, all in a kind of a collage. And this shows you, in a sense, how these paintings and these prints were made very important for people's lives. They were the story of this family in visual terms. Oh, there's one more. There it is again. She's spilling her water because the good-looking man is walking by. Okay, I think that's enough. And I thank you all for your attention. And I hope that along with some of the specialists here in the room, you'll gain a new understanding. I'm going to teach a course this fall in popular art. And I'll be using my examples from my experience in Tamil Nadu, but I'll also be asking my students to look at the popular arts of China, Japan, Africa at the same time. And I think what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to compare and contrast, but we'll see that the arts of the printed arts have had a big influence on the lives of people in the 20th century. I would be happy to take a question if anyone has a question or a comment. And you can comment in Tamil or English.
I'm Dr. Anbu Siva. He's a JPR University Tamil professor. பொங்கல் வாழ்த்து இதெல்லாம் நான் பார்க்கும்போது நாங்கள் ஸ்கூல் லெவலில் இருக்கும்போது நிறையா கார்டெல்லாம் கலெக்ட் பண்ணியிருக்கோம். அதே மாதிரி எனக்கு வந்து நிறையா கவிதைகள் புது கவிதைகள் ஒரு 25 தொகுப்புகள் எழுதியிருக்கேன். கவிதைகளில் இந்த ஓவியங்கள் நிறையா நான் இமேஜ் வச்சு நான் எழுதியிருக்கேன். பொதுவாகவே எங்கள் அப்பா சொல்லுவார், இந்த மாடு குளிப்பாட்டும் போது பொங்கல் அப்போ மாடு வந்து பின்னாடி போகும்போது உதச்சிட்டுது. அப்போ அந்த மாட்டை வந்து அடிக்க போகும்போது எங்கள் அப்பா அடிக்க வேணான்னு சொன்னார். இன்றைக்கி ஒரு நாள் வந்து மாட்டை அடிக்கக்கூடாது, ஏன்னா அது மாட்டு பொங்கல் அன்னைக்கு அதை ஞாபகம் வந்தது. இட்ஸ் வெரி impressed. It's very nice, this speech. Thank you for.
I think the work of Madhavan was, in a sense, very poetic. He wasn't a poet, but his work was poetic because by looking at one image, you can get a lot of, it's a story he's telling. And you get that story in one go, but there's a lot in it. There's a lot in it. And quite often it has a social message, it has a religious message, it has a political message, and he did it with a very light brush. They're not ponderous, they're not heavy, they're very light. And from my point of view, I would call that poetic in the largest sense. In other words, taking a long sentence or a long story and putting it into a single image. That was one of the characteristics of popular art.
இந்த வீடியோ உங்களுக்கு பிடிச்சிருந்தா லைக் பண்ணுங்க, ஷேர் பண்ணுங்க, கமெண்ட் பண்ணுங்க.